Okay, so we are now recording, and then I'm just setting up the Facebook title. Give me 1 second. Okay, it looks like we are now live on Facebook. Maddie, if you want to go ahead and take over.
Hey, Maddie, are we ready to go here?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I think my audio wasn't working before. Sorry about that. Here we go, I'm going to share my screen. And Councilmember Gary, I think you're going to get us started.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. As people are logging on here slowly, we're want to welcome everyone to the Aggie Square Housing and meeting and question and answer session. We've got a great group of panelists for everyone here. We're going to talk about some of the efforts that not only the city's taking on addressing our housing challenges, but also some of the exciting work that we've been putting forward together, along with what the housing opportunities are for Aggie Square, what the development project looks like. This is part of a series of working meetings that we've been putting together. Our last one, for those who are interested, we talked about workforce, the pipeline to finding opportunities for those who are living in the area to work and be part of the project here, and also a conversation about how we want to see and envision our kids participate in the future STEM opportunities here with Aggie Square. Today's conversation will be about housing, the needs of housing, what are the different points, not just construction of new housing, but what are other opportunities with those who are living around us with different assistance programs. And then at the end, we'll close off about what our next conversation will be regarding transportation. With that, I want to pass it over to my colleague, council member for District 5 and Vice Mayor right now for the City of Sacramento, Council Member Jay Chenier. Good morning. Good afternoon, Council Member.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. I wanted to add a couple things really quickly, if I could. First of all, I want to thank everyone who helped put this together. Leslie and Danielle and others from our staff, and then Allison, Coy, Madeline, Jasleen from our district staff as well, who've done a great job on this. A lot of work to put these together. I see we have about 65 participants, so I want to take this opportunity to say thank you all for zooming in with us. I know there's a lot going on and pretty icky weather outside, but unfortunately, I think if we were doing this one in person, we'd have about 6 people who would brave the weather to come out. So Zoom has a silver lining for us on this. I want to talk about the last 24 hours and a couple of actions that the council has taken, because I think it's important to talk about it when housing and homelessness are really the #1 issue in the city of Sacramento. Councilmember Guerra and I just finished a 2-hour council meeting where we voted to open warming centers. We have generally been under the auspices of the county on whether or not we could open warming centers. We're setting our own standards now because we just didn't believe that we had enough flexibility. We're putting forward $1 million. Hopefully that will be repaid through President Biden's new executive order with FEMA. But we put forward $1 million as a starting point to open more warming centers. We want to make sure people get shelter And hopefully with the FEMA dollars, we'll be able to do long-term hotels as well. That money hopefully can last through September. So there's the short term and the immediacy of getting people in out of the weather. I know that we had at least 2 deaths yesterday, one in District 4, one in District 5. The coroner said natural causes, but it could not have been good for people to be out in this kind of weather. The second thing is more long-term, and the city's budget and audit committee met yesterday, which Councilmember Guerra is one of the principals there. And they voted, we have some money left in our mid-year budget. Taxes came in a little bit better than we thought, and we have about $47.5 million. The budget committee voted to send to council a budget that included $40 million for affordable housing, $6 million for youth programming, $1 million for participatory budgeting, and $500,000 at least for climate work that we need to do. And that was Mr. Guerra making sure that those dollars got in there. So $47.5 million, but $40 million for affordable housing as really the beginning of an affordable housing trust fund that will be augmented by the EIFD, which we can talk about as we go forward here over time. And also we have and will continue to reach out to the county for some support on this as well into the Housing Trust Fund, and I think it will be promising. So we are moving on resources. We know that this is a key issue, and we want to continue moving forward with it. So with that, I want to turn this over, I'm sorry, to Madeline. Is that correct? For some housekeeping.
Yeah, so we're going to go through just a few quick things before we get started. We ask that all panelists leave their videos off until it's their turn to speak. Any questions to the panel can be asked in the Q&A chat. Please make sure to double check where you're sending your chat messages. If you're responding to a question.
Madeline, I just want to correct something. I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting you.
That's
but
okay.
Q&A, we'd like to go to Q&A, not to the chat. We just want to make sure that people, I think you said that, but use both those words. So questions should go in the Q&A. We will save the chat for later. If folks want to put their name and contact information into the chat so we make sure you're on our list, that would be great. Sorry, thank you.
That's okay, that's right. Please use the Q&A for any questions that you have. And if you're responding to a question, please make sure to double check where you're sending any messages. If you want to send to a panelist or to participants, please remember to be specific. All questions, the questions that are answered are going to be answered at the end of the meeting today. The chat function is available if you'd like to speak with other participants. We will be saving all the questions from today, so if your question doesn't get answered at the end of the panel, we will compile all the questions from the other 2 meetings we are holding as well and get answers to all the questions that are asked. Additionally, this webinar is being live streamed onto Councilmember Guerra and Vice Mayor Chenier's Facebook, and we will have staff monitoring those questions and entering them into the Q&A here on the Zoom meeting. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Jay.
And Councilmember Chenier, I forgot to mention a couple things here that I was supposed to do as part of the introduction here. You know, the format that we've been placing to put these panels together is we've taken all of the information over the last couple months that we've had from our stakeholder groups, even not last 2 years, frankly, here from our stakeholder groups, and identified what were the key issues and formulated these panels based on addressing those key issues. Those are the concerns about gentrification and displacement from the rising rents, housing affordability, the already pressures of the housing market here and statewide, the partnerships that UC Davis has been doing with housing in our neighborhoods, and then bringing together the shared points of existing programs. What do the next 3 years look like? And then what does it look like beyond? So the formulation of that. So my apologies for not giving that context beforehand. And with that, Council Member Chenier, Jay, you're going to lead us off here.
Jay, can I interrupt you for a second? One more thing, just I wanted everybody to be mindful of when you are using the chat. There is the option, just be mindful of who you are responding to make sure that your message gets across to the right people. You do have a drop-down option in the chat to either send to panelists and attendees, or direct message, and then you can select the person you'd like to send it to. Just because I see that there's kind of all sorts going on right now. So just be mindful of selecting the correct option that you want when you're using that chat. So Jake, go ahead.
Well, I think we are going to turn it over to Danielle Foster now, who's going to be working with our first panel. Danielle?
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Vice Mayor, and just gratitude to the City Council for all their leadership. And there is a lot going on the shelter front. But we're going to jump into, we want to talk first about affordable housing and just what it is. I think we use the term a lot. And then we'll talk about some existing resources for residents in the area that we wanted to be sure and highlight tonight. So first off, what is affordable housing? There's a state definition around affordable housing. And when I say affordable housing, I'm talking about deed restricted, public subsidy, or other sort of agreements that require the affordability. And the main goal here is to provide safe and decent housing for all Californians in the case of the California Code, and nationally in the case of HUD's code, the Housing and Urban Development definition. And the aim is that people are paying no more than 30 to 35% of their gross annual income towards housing. And when we talk about rental housing, that would include utility costs. And the 35% is more when we're getting into ownership. It might be more 35 to 40%, but really trying to acknowledge that we want to manage housing costs so that people have other funds to pay for transportation, education, clothing, food, all of the other things that are required to thrive. Medical. Okay, next slide, please. And so when looking at affordable housing, we create these categories of incomes that we're trying to serve, recognizing that there are different needs in different income categories. So it's all based on our community or our county median income, and their percentages of that. So we look at our median income, or the midpoint of all the households in the county, and work from there. So these are the percentages within. If you hear extremely low income, we're talking about 30% or below. Very low is 50%, low 80%. And we have the 2020 numbers. We don't have the 2021 numbers yet for incomes, but Sacramento, for a 4-person household, was at 86,300 for the median income. And if you go to the next slide, please, I'll show you the breakdown. So this, sorry for any small numbers here, but what it does is it's just showing you what the different income categories are by size of family. So number in the household, we say family or household, they're kind of interchangeable. So it might be one adult, might be 2 adults, it might be 1 adult with multiple kids. But whatever we're considering the household, whoever's living together in the unit. And then below that, just to show you kind of example rents or mortgage payments that would be affordable to these income levels, what we've done is we've divided that the target incomes by 12 to get their monthly gross income, and then divided it by 30%. And that's what gives us that rent, taking out for utilities. As I mentioned before, we want to include utilities in that cost. So there's an assumption here around which utilities the tenants would be paying in this case, but typically the owner's paying water, sewer, garbage, and the tenants are paying the rest. So this is just to give you a sense of kind of what level of rents would be necessary for different income levels to have an affordable rent in our community. Next slide, please. And then this is based on a state publication. It's the California Housing Policy Committee, and they put out information about how much it takes on the income side to afford housing in our state. And this is just to highlight, because I think it's always helpful to know, you know, who's getting served by affordable housing and what is the local need and what is that based on. So based on the research that's been done, it takes $38 an hour to make enough money to afford the average rent for a 2-bedroom in the state of California. So that's almost 3 times minimum wage. I know we're continuing to see minimum wage go up slightly, and there's lots of conversations about living wage. But just to give you a sense, a lot of professions in our community, childcare workers, retail, services, janitorial, construction, depending on, what their jobs are. There's a lot of folks in our community that don't make enough on an hourly basis to afford the average market rate rent. I would also note right now we're seeing an even higher increase in local rents because we are seeing more people from the Bay Area wanting to come closer to Tahoe and just live in smaller towns right now that they can, now that we can have remote workforce. And so we're seeing our rents go up and more demand on our rental market already. And then going to the next slide. So talking a little bit about affordable housing and how it gets built, we're going to talk about some housing projects in a little bit, but it does take subsidy either through private or public sources to provide affordable housing. The rents are below market, and depending on the cost of construction and the cost of the land, it often requires subsidy. It also depends on which income level is being targeted to be served. But the deeper income levels, the further you go down to very low and extremely low income, the more subsidies that are required. And usually that's a combination of local, state, and federal funding. So, really important, the information that the Vice Mayor just shared about the steps the city's taking to provide additional resources locally. Because what we do is we work with our affordable housing developers to then leverage state resources that come from our California Department of Housing and Community Development and federal resources that come through HUD, or the Housing and Urban Development. And some of that includes private investments where people get tax credits for investing into affordable housing. And it's very competitive. There's a huge need. And so the more local resources that we have to leverage those other funding sources, the more competitive we are in those programs. And these funds help with both the subsidy of rent and the long-term services that are needed to help support the residents and make sure that they have all the connections to services in the community. So I think that's my last slide. Next slide. Yeah. So any questions you have on that, go ahead and put in the chat, the question and answer category. And we'll circle back on that later. But I wanted to go ahead and introduce Tina Lee Vogt, who is our manager over our tenant protection program. And we wanted to have her just speak a little bit of some of our existing support services around tenant protections. Tina?
And if I can say, Tina, give me 1 second, I apologize, but we're talking a lot about what the city is trying to do in housing, and this goes beyond Stockton Boulevard and Aggie Square. But we thought it was really important today because the city really is the leader on the housing issue to put in context what's happening. We'll get to Aggie Square, but these are important pieces of the puzzle that will impact Aggie Square. So thank you. I appreciate that. Tina, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
No, I'm going to go ahead. Again, my name is Tina Lee Vogt. I'm the program manager with the Community Development Department Code Compliance Division. So I'd like to give a quick overview of the tenant protection program, just because some folks may not be aware of what we provide. So the tenant protection program, or TPP, was created to assist tenants by establishing limits on annual rent increases and providing protections for unjustified evictions. So our 3-person staff works with Sacramento Self-Help Housing to answer calls and emails to assist tenants and landlords with inquiries about our program. And we also provide information on other resources that are available. So our program primarily applies to apartments and duplexes that were built before February 1st, 1995. Single family dwellings and rental units and condominiums are excluded. There are 2 basic components of our programs. So first, it limits annual rent rate increases, so they're no more than 5% plus the change in the consumer price index, not to exceed 10%. And the current maximum rent increase is 6%. It's updated annually and it's available on our website. One thing to note is that the rental rate can't be increased more than once every 12 months, and a tenant can't waive that maximum rate and limit. Also, this restriction applies to all tenants, regardless of how long they've lived in the unit. And if tenants have received a rate increase that they think is inappropriate, they can go ahead and submit a complaint to the city, and we can follow up to see if that's a violation with the landlord. The second component is related to eviction, and a landlord can't terminate the rental agreement and require the tenant to move out without just cause once a tenant has lived there 12 months or more. And just cause reasons for eviction include failure to pay rent, breach of the rental housing agreement, criminal or nuisance activity, failure to give access, necessary and substantial repairs requiring temporary vacancy, owner move-in, or withdrawal of the unit from the rental market. It should be noted that for a lot of these causes that the landlord may have, they're required to give a 120-day advance notice for it to be effective. And in addition, if they are withdrawing it from the rental market, they're also required to give the city notice that they're doing that. And that would include if they're going to demolish the units. So a tenant should contact our office if they believe a landlord has terminated a rental agreement without just cause to file a complaint. And we also have pre-eviction hearings. So we have a hearing examiner who can determine if the landlord's activities were appropriate. We really ask that folks contact us as soon as possible once they get the termination notice, because time is of the essence. So if they've given you a notice for 60 days, it could be a violation, but we want to make sure you're contacting us on day 2, not day 55. Landlords are subject to administrative penalties up to $25,000 for violating the code by either improperly raising rent or attempting to evict a tenant without just cause. I did want to give a quick update on tenant protections related to COVID-19. The city's moratorium allowing non-payment of rent for residential tenants impacted by COVID expired last September, following the enactment of AB 3088, which provided eviction protection for all residential tenants in the state. As folks may know, it's scheduled to expire this Sunday. However, legislation has been introduced to extend its provisions and ensure the continuation of eviction protections. And this legislation should be enacted before the end of the week. And it would extend protections to July 1st, 2021. So in closing, I just want to really encourage folks, if they need assistance, to contact our office. Probably the best way to contact us is via email at tpp@cityofsacramento.org. And it's really important that tenants provide their rental address, a specific reason why they're contacting us. For example, is it a rent increase? Are you being evicted? And the best way for us to contact you, whether it's a phone number or an email. If you've gotten any documentation, it's really helpful to give that to us. So your lease or any notice you've received, that really helps us expedite our response. You can also call our office. It's 916-808-8121. Again, leave a detailed message for us. And our staff actually has been getting back to people within 24 hours, if not the same day. And again, for really detailed information, you can contact our website at cityofsacramento.org/TPP. So that's kind of the tenant protection program in a nutshell. And then if folks have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thanks so much, Tina. And I just wanted to add, related to the tenant protection and rental assistance, we are getting additional funds from the federal government, $15 million for rental assistance. And so anyone who has been under the moratorium protected and hasn't been able to pay rent could apply through the SARA program. And if one of our assistants could add to the chat just the www.shra.org/SARA. We're anticipating that applications would open again in February, but more information to come. Thanks so much. And then let's go ahead and turn over to Amy Williamson, who's with our FEC, our Financial Empowerment Center, and she's going to talk a little bit about those resources.
Yes, thank you, Danielle, and good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Williamson, and I'm the manager of the city's Financial Empowerment Center, or FEC, which is a relatively new city initiative that provides free financial coaching and navigation for local residents. And I'm especially glad to be here this evening to talk about how our services can help with housing stability, because I spent many years here in Sacramento earlier in my career working for local affordable housing organizations, so it's very near and dear to my heart. So we launched the FEC initiative last spring, right at the outset of the pandemic. Initially, before that, our one-on-one coaching services were intended to be in person, but like many others, we've pivoted, and so they're all virtual support through phone calls and video chat. And through our partnership with our lead community partner, which is the Sacramento Office of International Rescue Committee, we have really an amazing team of 4 professional financial coaches who can help people with financial fundamentals. So our key areas of work are around reducing debt, building savings, establishing or improving credit, and accessing safe and affordable checking and savings accounts. So those goals, of course, are important for long-term financial health and can support many life goals, but they can be particularly important for housing stability. So as we know, for renters, being able to pass a credit check and to have sufficient funds for a deposit, having an affordable bank or credit union account to pay rent rather than paying super high fees for check cashing and payday loans, and having savings set aside for the kinds of emergencies that are always common, but that even more of us have experienced this past year, those things are also crucial. And then as well, looking more toward the long term, our coaches can also help those who are thinking about eventual home ownership to develop a plan toward that end as well. So that's our coaching. And then we also have 2 financial navigators who are more focused on helping our clients, in particular, who have been more financially impacted by COVID-19 directly, to identify more urgent financial resources, such as employment retraining, immediate housing stability assistance, such as the SARA funds that Danielle mentioned that were available before and will become available again with the new funds, public benefits, food, all those kinds of urgent needs. And our navigators can also provide support with the applications for those resources as needed. So really, to sum up, our whole FEC staff is ready to help each individual client with their own unique financial challenges and goals. And they really tailor their support around what it is that each person is looking to achieve for themselves and their household. We have a coach and both our navigators who speak Spanish, and one of our navigators also speaks Arabic. We also have support in other languages available as well through interpretation on request. So I'm going to give you some information now. Don't worry about writing it all down. I'm going to copy it into the chat after I say it. But to make an appointment with an FEC coach or navigator, people can email fec@cityofsacramento.org or call 916-808-4927. And then for those of you who work with organizations that have many clients who might benefit, I am also personally happy to discuss a partnership, and you can email me at awilliamson@cityofsacramento.org. And then lastly, our FEC website is at www.cityofsacramento.org/financial empowerment. So I will put all of that in the chat now, and I'll be happy to answer questions as well during the Q&A later.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Danielle, do we have NeighborWorks today or no?
I was gonna go ahead and give an overview of the programs for first-time homebuyer and home repair.
Okay, great.
So a couple of programs that we have and are hoping to expand. We have some existing resources for home repair through SHRA, but we have recently created a collaborative of 6 nonprofits, including NeighborWorks and Habitat for Humanity and Rebuilding Together and several others, as well as SMUD, to work on doing home repair projects for low-income homeowners. So these may be things like replacing a roof or helping with water heater replacements and things that are just harder to get to, maybe windows and other things that need to be repaired. Also working with them to see if we can pair it with electrification and bringing more units towards going all electric, and consistent with both council goals for the environment as well as affordability reasons. And so we are working on getting some more resources to go towards that. The other piece is both NeighborWorks and SHRA has had first-time homebuyer and down payment assistance programs. And we continue to work on expanding those to provide additional assistance. Usually it acts as either down payment assistance to help with that initial 20% or 10%, or can be gap financing between a first mortgage and acting as kind of a silent second mortgage to help people afford ownership. So if you have questions about any of the resources, again, feel free to put it in the Q&A and we'll circle back later. We know that was a lot of information, so we'll be sure to post it as well.
Great. So we wanted to start with the larger context of some of the programs the city is running. We're going to move now to talking specifically about Stockton Boulevard. Danielle, did you want to start, or do we want to start with some of the developments that are happening?
Yeah, I was going to go ahead and show a slide of just the overview of projects. If we could bring the slide deck up.
And as she brings that up, I think this is an exciting part that both our economic development department, Jay's office, my office have been aggressively working on putting some attention on Stockton Boulevard. And this is also a part of a bigger citywide strategy that now has turned into a countywide, a multi-countywide strategy to look at investments in our commercial corridors. And we see these challenges not just on Stockton Boulevard, but on Northgate, El Paso, Fruit Ridge, and we want to make this Stockton Boulevard be the example so we can kind of move this throughout not just the city, but the county as well.
This is the most exciting chart we've got for a while here. If we can go back. Go ahead, Danielle.
I do want to reiterate what the council member said, that this has been a long time in the making, and I would say both of the district offices as well as economic development staff and our neighborhood development action team, we are all trying to put a lot of energy into expanding housing options along Stockton. So this is an exciting list. I agree with that. So this is just an overview to show all of the things that are in the works so far. And most are in pre-development phases. And a number of these are affordable housing projects solely or a combination of, and of course, including the student housing component of Aggie Square. These are looking at different income levels that we're trying to serve, supporting the local community, and these could be some projects that could leverage some of those local resources with state and federal funding to expand housing options. So we just wanted to share this as kind of an overview of things in the works. But as part of that, we invited both Mercy Housing and the College Town Partnership to talk about the Gateway project. So why don't we go ahead and pass it over to Stephen Dawes with Mercy Housing.
Great. Stephen.
Good evening, all. Sorry, my screen just went crazy. I was going to try and share my screen if that's possible and show our current site plan.
Stephen, if that's not working, I can pull it up for you.
All right, is that working?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, actually, I picked the wrong one. All right. Well, I'll just go with this. I'm going to presume everybody knows where this is. So this is, as Danielle labeled on her chart, I think commonly known as the Jones Furniture site, which was the longest running use on the site. But as many people may know, if they're familiar with this stretch of Stockton Boulevard is connected to even more vacant land. So this site is just on the northern stretch of that vacant U-shaped stretch of land that used to be mobile home parks and a couple of motels on the southern edge, and backs up to West Campus and Mark Twain Elementary to the east. And so we've been working for many years, and in fact, actually dreaming about being part of redeveloping this land more than a decade from when we worked on converting the Budget Inn Motel into what you all know now as the Boulevard Court Apartments, that is immediately south of all of this vacant land, and is celebrating its 10th anniversary of being completed and converted later this year. And so in pursuing various concepts over the last 18 months or so for this site, we ultimately just focused on this northern parcel that is separately owned from the rest of the vacant land, and developed this concept that you see here for 200 rental apartments as affordable lower income housing. And we're proposing a site plan that does as much as possible to integrate into and continue the street grid that was actually once imagined and mapped for all of this land. And so continuing 54th Street to the north with a connection there, and ideally being a catalyst for continuing this street pattern and further residential development on the remaining vacant land to the south. So we've designed the site with 3 building types. High density 4-story building facing Stockton Boulevard, a triplex, more single family type model to the north that you see there, backing up to the existing single family homes. And then a more traditional 3-story walk-up apartment building spread out throughout the rest of the site going south, and then as it doglegs behind the Thrift Town Goodwill building and backing up to the West Campus fields. So we're in the middle of working through the city's brand new streamlined ministerial approval process, and we hope to be through that process in the next 30 days and be in a position to begin pursuing the multiple layers of funding that these developments require. So we're still in the very early stages of developing a finance plan, but one of the questions we commonly get is why only 200 units on nearly 8 acres? And there's various reasons for it. One of which is we want the density to respect the single family neighborhood to the north. But really the overriding factor is the fact that gap financing is essential for and does not get lower as affordable housing project sizes increase. In fact, it can increase. And so the reality is that we are going to have to phase this development. We're looking at probably doing it, phase 1 is the first 125 units, and then a phase 2 is 75 units. And that is simply a factor of the availability of gap financing. And we hope that changes and that we could do it all at once, a lot faster within the next year. We're looking forward to working with both the city, Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, as well as state funding partners on putting together that plan. I'll stop there. I know that probably wasn't as quick as folks wanted me to be, but I'll be available for questions and answers later.
Yeah.
Stephen, you were fabulous.
We'll talk a little bit about the exciting opportunity that will be coming to council that we just approved yesterday at the Budget and Audit Committee. And so keep that number in mind, because we want to talk a little bit about that number.
For sure.
Let's go ahead and move to the Gateway project. Dan Weinstein is here. Dan? Oh, and Dan Weitzman is here today.
Hi, Jay. How are you? Good to see
Dan.
you.
Yes, please go ahead.
How are you, Jay?
I'm well, thank you.
Good to see you. Belated Happy New Year. Hello to everybody. I have just a very, I don't have a presentation per se. We're in the middle of design. Maybe what I would like to do is just give a very brief description of the site itself. We are between 9th and 10th on Stockton Boulevard, and we're on both the west and east parcels. And our project will be multifamily. It's all privately financed. We don't have an exact count at the moment, nor do we have a unit mix, but we're going to try to be fairly diverse on that. I would say roughly about 200 units. So we're excited about the project, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. But again, we're kind of in our sort of preliminary stages of design concepts and working with city staff.
Maybe Dan, talk about your target population. Who do you see renting these?
Well, I think Jay, that what we originally thought was what attracted us to the site is the proximity to the hospitals and all of the staff that work there. It could be doctors, it could be nurses, it could be staff. But I think to be able to provide housing to a very large workforce would be, is something that I think would be needed and we thought would be appealing. So I think for people that could almost kind of have a live work where they could be within close proximity to their workplace, cut down on traffic and car counts, I think we're counting on that. So I think that in and of itself, I think for the people that work at the hospitals, both at the med center and at the Shriners, I think this would be something that would be appealing to them. There's well in excess of 10,000 employees. We also have students. We haven't really assessed what the needs are there. We've had historically a good relationship with the university because we've developed in Davis before, but again, we haven't really thought about it in terms of the students. There might be a demand there. We really haven't determined what the appetite would be there. But certainly we'd be open to students as well and people in the community that would be looking for housing. So we're very open on the sort of tenant profile.
Great.
That's an important point, Dan, because when we're talking about how do we relieve pressure on the housing market in the adjacent neighborhoods, this definitely takes away from that. And I've lived next to many employees who worked at the university on the campus site there. Some of them like to live in the single family homes out there, but others would like to have a smaller unit. And I think this is another option where we can provide a variety of housing type for the workforce that is in the area as well. And remind me, I think, Dan, you have an affordability component too. You're going to have a portion of it as with affordability.
Yeah, I think, Eric, we're still undetermined on that, but I've talked to Leslie about it, and I give Leslie all the credit here for being tenacious, but and caring about that, and as do we. So I think we're working through that right now, and I think we'll come back with a plan on that. So I think that's kind of in the formative stages, but we certainly want to be, a good community partner.
Great. And if all things go well, when do you think people could start moving in?
Boy,
what's your hope here?
Yeah.
I know you're dealing with the city, but we're trying to move this along.
Actually, Jay, the city, I will say that has been very good. It's honestly been more us because we're trying to figure out, making sure that the project will be viable and penciled, and we're committed to it. But we're just really working through that. So honestly, it's really been more us. I have to give a lot of credit to Station Tom and the people at planning. They've been very, very good to work with. So, and I don't say that often because we have a lot of projects, and ironically, I would say that also about the city of Davis. The staff there was very good to work with, but your staff has been excellent to work with. So there's been no issues there.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Thank you.
So I would say that the project time, because we do have, and we're not sure, I heard what was said by Mercy, which was, I thought, very well explained, but we haven't decided yet about phasing. I just don't know. We're trying to see what makes the most sense. Ideally, we'd like to launch it all at once and see if that would be feasible. And I would imagine that if we did it all together, you're probably looking at the very least about 20 months of construction.
Okay, great.
So, we'll see. And obviously we acquired this property before we really knew about Aggie Square. I'd love to say that we had tremendous foresight, but we were, I'm not sure that's entirely accurate, but it's a terrific project. It would be great, a great asset to the community. So we're certainly excited about that as well.
Great, thank you. So Eric, did you want to talk a little bit about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? I know I stole a little bit of your thunder, but I think it's
you did.
important.
That's okay. I think it's important that we kind of repeat it
Yeah.
over and over again, because it's been a commitment that we actually started discussing back in 2019 in creating a housing trust fund. And back then it was Councilmember Jennings, Hansen, and I that put together a package that also led to the Tenant Protection Act. And I think later on I'd like Tina Lee Votes to answer some of the questions about the Tenant Protection Act, but it was all encompassing on how do we look at supply plus protection for current renters. And so that led to last year's commitment also, and in that vein, to push for $100 million on a housing bond. And we continued to move in that step, and then COVID hit. And I think that really changed a lot of our slowed our momentum, but not our direction. And so what happened this year is, as we saw the numbers come in from particularly because of a few court cases that came in, and gives the city an advantage on how we collect sales tax from online sales, gave us the ability to collect $40 million in this midterm budget. We know that housing and mobility are the two biggest issues affecting our residents here, being able to get to work and to live and work at the same time. And so at the Budget and Audit Committee yesterday, we took an action to allocate $40 million of this one-time money for what is a very good one-time expenditure, which is housing. It's capital construction, and to set it aside in a housing trust fund so that we can use it to be competitive and leverage that gap financing. One of the most important things that makes it difficult for our affordable housing developers is that they have to compete for these funds with the Bay Area, LA, other areas that can put together a better smorgasbord of funding that makes their projects more competitive. By us being able to have another local match, it helps us draw down more dollars. And so I think this is a huge opportunity for us to look at using this one-time money and put it directly into housing. Now, to go beyond that, one of the actions that I asked and was part of the motion is to prioritize the commercial corridors, because this helps on a double effect. Not only are we going to build housing in commercial corridors, but we have a lot of property that is vacant that isn't providing any economic opportunity and actually not delivering any property tax revenue that we can reinvest back into the community. So the ability for us to do this housing trust fund not only provides housing, but it helps us prime the pump for more economic development. I do want to thank Stephen Dobbs and Mercy Housing, because not only have they been committed to the Boulevard, but their concept of building dense closer to the Boulevard also creates this energy to create that walkability, that vibrance on the Boulevard to attract more activity there. The same thing with the project that you heard Dan Weinstein talk about. It will be built around the Colonial Theater, which also gives it that revibrance of maybe creating this colonial district, another walkable area that creates more opportunity for small businesses and small shops to create and locate there. So the smart use of this $40 million helps us with that gap financing. And Stephen, if I could ask you, right now, what is your perceived gap finance for that project?
Well, the gap funding for affordable housing, when you provide a range like we're intending to, which is ideally having up to a third of the units targeted at extremely low income, or that ELI level that we're all trying to get for to address the greatest need, up to even including a moderate income level. The gap is upwards of $150,000 a unit. That being said, when you do scale it to the size that we can at 200 units, you can bring that down. And so depending on the various state resources that may be available, that gap can be brought down to $10 million, or it could be high as $20 million. So our estimate based on the state resources that are likely available is right in the middle at about $15 million for the 200 units.
So I think it's probably safe to say that by us having a local match, it helps us increase our likelihood of state support, which kind of brings that gap even closer. And one of the important things I also want to highlight about a project like this is that it's also creating a community park. And for those that live in the Talek Village community, there isn't any park or open space other than this parkway strip that used to be the actual streetcar that went down 21st Avenue, and then they, mistakenly, I think one of the errors in our history, paved over it and built a parkway there. But this would have a community park for the area as well. So I think, Jay, I think back to your point about this exciting thing is how do we use our money smartly to do economic development, more housing for our folks, but also provide amenities for the adjacent neighborhood.
Great, thanks, Eric. I actually think that's a really good segue to the last panel here, which you're moderating. As we scope down from, what the city is doing largely to what we're trying to do on Stockton Boulevard, now let's talk specifically about Aggie Square. So you're back up. And then we will get to questions from everyone. We have quite a few questions to go through, but time to do it.
And so first I want to introduce Leslie Fritchie here from our Office of Economic Development. And Leslie has not only been active in Aggie Square here, but before even Aggie Square became a concept, we pulled her in to say, help us think through how can we really energize the commercial corridor and bring some livelihood back into the corridor there. Our second panelist here is Bob Siegert, that is leading Aggie Square. Most of you have gotten to know Bob here as part of all our presentations. He's going to be kind of our resident uncle on the corridor here. So welcome Leslie and welcome Bob. And I think let's for some of the folks that come in, this is a very basic project overview. Bob, can you help talk to us about that and talk a little bit about the number of students and jobs that we're expecting in Aggie Square and how that affects with the overall university staff and faculty and what does it mean for housing specifically?
Sure. Happy, Councilman Guerra. And I'm sorry for not coming on video, folks. I'm without power and trying to conserve the battery to make it to the end of the session. So appreciate it. And very exciting, and congratulations to council members for advancing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And it's exciting to see the activity along the boulevard. I remember about a year ago, both council members put together a map that showed over 60 vacant and underutilized parcels along the Stockton corridor in about a 4-mile stretch. And so the enlivening of that and any role Aggie Square can play in enlivening that is very gratifying. So briefly, Aggie Square in a couple of minutes, and then we'll talk about some of the value that Aggie Square is generating towards these housing goals. Aggie Square, for those of you who haven't been familiar, I apologize, I didn't bring a presentation, but it's been pretty well publicized. It's on the UC Davis campus at the home of the UC Davis Health and the Medical Center. So right along Stockton Boulevard. The Aggie Square project itself is just south of the hospital. Again, on campus land. It's basically between 2nd Avenue and Broadway. Phase 1 of Aggie Square is, it's a very different way of building the future of the campus than we've ever done before. The typical way we build a campus is we build research buildings and we build classrooms and patient care facilities. And the classrooms and the research are pretty much just university buildings. Aggie Square is different. Aggie Square from the beginning has been viewed as a partnership with the city of Sacramento and our communities so that the work of the university can be leveraged for inclusive economic development. I think that's part of what you're seeing tonight. So Aggie Square is a big project. It's about 1 million square feet. It's envisioned that about half of the project will be occupied by university functions, and the other half will be occupied by private industry investing in Sacramento that is attracted to leverage that university research, and educational partners and community-based partners So it's a platform for partnerships to leverage the work of the university in Sacramento. It's composed of a couple of lab buildings, a building we're calling the Lifelong Learning Building that'll have training and workforce development programs that we talked about in another forum. And it does have a housing project. The housing project is envisioned from 200 to 400 people. It's targeted mostly at students and both medical and nursing students that are already exist, and some graduate students on the Sacramento campus going to school and working there, who now need to seek housing out in the community. We hope to provide an alternative right on campus to pick up some of that demand. We also expect it to be attractive to some undergraduate students that will be studying in Sacramento. So largely focused on student housing. So there are other programs that we can talk about. I know we want to get to the kind of marquee part of this with Leslie's going to talk about, which is council members talked about the action they just took for the citywide Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and Aggie Square generates its own opportunity to do something similar to generate funds for affordable housing that Leslie's going to talk about. But I just want to preface that again by saying what it is about Aggie Square that makes that possible. And I can't highlight it enough. But if it was a typical university project, a public project, just university research, it would not generate any property tax value for the city of Sacramento. But because it's envisioned as a partnership project to host private investment alongside the university, that private investment does generate value. And that has been, Leslie's going to explain how that value is being leveraged to meet some of the needs that we're talking about tonight.
So thank you, Bob, for the torch. I will take it from here. So Bob, this is Leslie Fritchie. I'm with the city's Innovation and Economic Development Department. And so I just wanted to briefly talk about what Aggie Square will bring to the community in terms of resources for affordable housing. So I think for those who have attended previous community forums, you have learned the term of an enhanced infrastructure financing district. So basically, we are drawing a line around the Aggie Square campus, and the revenue, the tax increment revenue that'll be generated within that boundary will be used for infrastructure improvements within that district. But 20% of the funds that will be generated from that property tax that would normally come to the city will be used for affordable housing in the surrounding area. So this is kind of the first time this has been done with an EIFD. And so we're excited to have basically a carve out or a set aside. So 20% of the taxes that would normally flow to the city from the Aggie Square project will be used to support the projects such as you heard tonight, the ones by Dan Weinstein, hopefully supporting the ones that Stephen Dawes mentioned, as well as many others that are planned along Stockton Boulevard. It's our hope that we can both create new units along the boulevard, but also use these resources for other programs to help stabilize the neighborhood around it. So whether that's home repair programs, such as Danielle mentioned, or down payment assistance programs, all of that is still to be determined. I think the message to take away from today is that the Aggie Square project will generate funding that can specifically be used for affordable housing endeavors in the surrounding area. So that's my Aggie Square Housing Set Aside 101. I'm available for questions at the end if you have any, particularly of me. I will give you kind of a scope of magnitude over the course of the project. It is envisioned that may generate about $37 million. And so that's a pretty sizable chunk of funds, in addition to the affordable housing funds, housing trust fund that Councilmember Chenier and Councilmember Guerra mentioned earlier. We are looking forward to really ramping up our housing activities in the area, and look forward to working with Danielle, our housing policy manager, to get those going as quickly as we can. So we're available for questions after the presentation.
Leslie, this is Bob. Maybe just mention how there's community representation on the governance of this of these funds as well.
Great, thanks, Bob. And then could you at least could you put in the chat there, or the quick question and answer, the contact points, links, phone numbers that that the public can engage in this process, and also
Certainly.
we'll be giving the dates for the upcoming town halls where we collect all this information, the comments that are made here. We all take all of this back as an iterative process to develop the solutions here. But I want to go back
And
to Leslie.
Councilmember, oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Leslie, creating a separate pot of money aside from the Housing Trust Fund, money that's coming from the EIFD, from what we're able to secure from the Aggie Square project. How does that play again in the competitiveness of drawing down tax credits, federal grants, state grants? How does that all play in together?
What that does is it really makes us more competitive for those grants. As Stephen Dawes will mention and has years of experience, it takes local funding often to be competitive across the state for a lot of those state housing funds. And so to have a pot that we can use really moves us up in the rank order of how we can be competitive to bring some of those monies from the capital and from the state to Stockton Boulevard and make some of these projects happen. In addition, I did want to mention, and I think this is a comment that Bob had for me, the funding for the EIFD is governed by a separate finance authority, of which there are 2 community members on that authority, as well as 3 council members. So there is a community voice ongoing, and we will be working through that separate authority as we move forward in the development of the programs in conjunction with community participation.
Great, and so in combination, the efforts here that are happening from, say, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, they're all adding to what's also going to happen on the campus. And so, Bob, can you talk a little more about? There's been questions about, well, what is Wexford and Aggie Square, or the UC's commitment to this, and what has been the kind of the direction of the regents on the development of housing for the campus?
Yeah, sorry, I just gave a similar to the brief summary I just gave. Thank you, council member. So the Wexford that was just mentioned is the developer of the project that the university recruited to build Aggie Square, and they bring the capital investment for Aggie Square. And again, the reason is because the university is acting as really the anchor program that will again take about half the space, and then Wexford will build that and the rest of the space that will be attractive to other tenants to invest. The housing project itself is one of the 4 buildings that Wexford will build. It again will be housing for 200 to 400 people. The regents of the university it's been part of the project design from the beginning, and the regents have included it in the very first, they want it included in the very first phase of the project. And they want it small a affordable for students, meaning can we bring it in below market to make the rents as accessible and affordable for students as possible, which is what we're pursuing.
Great, thanks. And so those units, on top of what you heard from Mercy Housing, on top of what you heard from the Collegetown project there on Stockton, the 2 parcels on 9th Avenue and 10th Avenue, and then an exciting new opportunity with the old San Juan Motel site. Many who've lived in the area remember the old motel and the mobile home park, trailer park that was there. That is an exciting thing where SHRA has already released the RFP to Mutual Housing, which is another local nonprofit affordable housing provider who's already built housing down further on Stockton Boulevard, south of Florin Road. And that's another 116. And I think we've talked about seeing if we can push that to 150 units there of affordable housing. And what's important, and maybe Leslie, if you can answer this, there's a question there about all these projects are maybe only for folks who are experiencing homelessness. Now, the extremely low income component is a portion of that, but what type of families are eligible for this type of housing?
Well, I think you learned earlier from some of the slides that Danielle presented that affordable housing really is a whole range. And certainly a lot of it, though it's dubbed affordable, really is designed for the workforce, designed for people that, you know, you have in that maybe serve you coffee in the morning, or someone that is you know, helping you load groceries or anything that you might have. So it really is a range of both. Workforce housing can fit very keenly in that affordability band. I think Danielle's figure was it's up to $35 an hour or something like that. So you can imagine how many different types of jobs fit under that threshold, and that those are the types of employees, or those are the type of workforce people that are eligible and fit into the categories that we view as affordable housing.
Great, thank you. So I was trying to get a couple of those questions off of the plate from our next moderator, which is, I'm going to kick it back to Jay for the Q&A. There's been questions and ideas that are popping up. Please continue to use the Q&A because we want to answer them. We have got all our teams trying to answer them and put in information there. So I'm going to kick it back to Jay, and this will be the quick fire for everyone who's presented this evening. And Jay, you're on mute.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So if I can answer them quickly, I will. Otherwise, I'll turn to one of our panelists, which will be on most of these. But also, I want to note that 9 of the questions have been answered already. So if people go to the Q&A and go to the column that says answered, you can see what the answers are to that. Question: Sacramento used to require developers to build a certain percentage of units of a development to be affordable. What happened to that? That is something that kind of went away during the recession. When I got on the council, which was pre-Eric, we looked at instituting a fee for that, and the fee that we did matched what the county was doing. And that was really about being competitive with the county because there was nothing at all being built. I think it's probably time to take a look at that. So that I assume will be on the council agenda sometime this year. What is considered market rate rent or the median rate? Danielle, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is it fluctuates by areas within the city, but it also is kind of on its way up right now. So I'm hesitating a little bit. But the example of the average rent in the California example, I think it's for a 2-bedroom, it was up at I want to say 1,400. I think it varies. So I don't know if I have an exact number right now, but it definitely keeps going up right now.
Okay, thank you.
Jay, and if I put in a little bit of also with Leslie's comment and Danielle's comment that, you know, while even though the city changed its policy and we've been collecting fees from some of the developers, many of them have designed their projects with an affordable housing component to it. Dan Weinstein and Weitzman are looking at that, even though it's not required. They're putting components into that aspect, and we've also provided you know, incentives to try to assist with moving in that direction too, by saying we'll assist you with the process faster if you move in that direction. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So for a number of the projects, if there is a certain affordability component, like a mixed income project, some of those types of projects can receive reductions in city fees. So we are trying to build in a lot of incentives to increase the amount of affordable housing and the amount of affordable housing mixed in with market rate. So we are trying to look at all types of projects, not just solely 100% affordable, but really looking at mixed income projects as well, and doing what we can to incentivize those to occur.
Okay, great, thank you. What about making sure that rentals aren't corporate owned, or at least that there is a balance, also more accountability to tenants by property management companies? We need policy to protect tenants and property owners as well. Allison?
Well, I was going to maybe also put that on Tina Lee Votes here, who runs our tenant. We could talk about the tenant protection program.
Okay. Let's start with Allison, Eric. She wanted to take a shot at it, and then if there's more, Tina can add to that. Absolutely. Allison? Or let's try Tina. Are you unmuted?
Our city code doesn't really do anything to address the ownership issue. So right now, the city code doesn't address kind of limiting who owns the different rental properties. But looking at our rental housing program, a lot of properties, especially our single family homes, are really owned by individuals. It's more our larger complex that are owned by companies. So that would be something that we might want to look at in terms of who owns them. One thing we could probably get a better idea in terms, especially those that are covered by the tenant protection program. We're getting ready to do our registration. So we could go ahead and report back on kind of how the property ownership looks. And then maybe the council might want to take a little bit of time to determine how they might want to address that issue to maybe have it be more personal property owners versus larger companies.
Okay.
And then as far as the tenant protection program, in 2019, the council passed a cap on rents, increased rents, and that was part of the not only the support with Sacramento Self-Help Housing, but also the cap. And right now we're at a cap of 6%. Is that correct, or is it 5%? I can't remember, Tina.
So the cap is currently 6% because the maximum is 5% plus the CPI, and last year's CPI was 1%. So we're currently at 6%. We'll take a look at that again when the numbers come out. We use it based on the CPI that's generated in April. That information doesn't really come out though until about 6 weeks later. So the effective date every year is July 1st, and we update the website with that information. One thing I want to make sure that it's really clear people understand though too, is that it's not something people can go ahead and agree to. So if you really feel like your landlord's charging it, really it is a maximum. So you can go ahead and let our office know, and we can let the landlord know without telling them who told us that what the rate should be, so that we can go ahead and make sure people are falling within that maximum.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tina. What will be done to address the increase in home prices we are already seeing and have since 2019 as a direct result of the future Aggie Square development? Danielle, do you want to try that one? And I'm happy to chime in as well.
Sure. I think a couple of programs that we've talked about, and maybe some we haven't, but first one would just be down payment assistance and trying to do what we can to offer those opportunities as soon as we can for folks that are trying to purchase in the area currently. Or to stabilize housing costs that way. We also are looking at community ownership models and land trusts and other options where we might be able to control the costs of housing in a different way. So we're trying to evaluate the options for other ownership models, cooperative models that might work for the community as well.
Great, thank you. And what I would add too is, coming out of the recession and then with the demise of redevelopment dollars, we have a supply problem. We just have not kept up with the increases in population. And so when you look at supply and demand, we need more supply of this. That will help. And I know that we've taken a lot of measures, particularly around affordable housing, making it easier and streamlining the processes so that developers of affordable or market rate housing look to Sacramento, have an easier time. And I was really excited to hear Dan say that the city has been really collaborative and cooperative with him as we move forward. I think that's a big piece of it. We want developers to come to Sacramento to be able to build affordable housing and build market rate housing. That will take pressure off and help with price hikes.
And if
The other thing I want to add is in the recent years, we've taken a different approach on the size of even single family homes, the cost of homes. And if you see in the developments in both Tahoe Park and the southern area, and is that we've not only built your traditional suburban home in empty areas, but we've also looked at homes that have say smaller footprints. Maybe they're more of a townhome option, to give people a variety of what they can afford. I mean, one of the tragic things is that even for folks who are purchasing homes, sometimes their mortgages are more than they should be or can afford, but there's only one option available. And so I think the variety of options and the type of what's available to purchase is an important aspect in that supply question as well.
Okay, thanks, Eric. I appreciate hearing all of the great things the city is doing. Thank you. What is UC Davis doing, and what will their accountability be? Bob, I'm going to give that to you.
Sure. Well, I'll just come back to the two big things. The first would be the housing project on site, again, to pick up as much of the demand, student generated, as we can from our project. But really, we could call it a city action or a university action or a developer action. It actually takes all three to generate the funds and then redirect them through this enhanced infrastructure financing district. So it's the project that generates those funds through the private investment that wouldn't be there otherwise, the developer's investment that it takes to generate it, and the city's action to take that value and redirect it back into the affordable housing need. I also think, Danielle and Leslie, that when people are asking about flexibility to invest in different programs, those funds, I believe, will be flexible to invest in either the programmatic, some of the programs that you talked about, to help renters and potential buyers, as well as units themselves. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, flexibility. The other thing that I would add to that, and someone had put in the chat a question about the community benefits agreement. So that's something that is still under negotiation. The city is involved, a number of nonprofit organizations are involved, and certainly UC Davis and Wexford. But part of that is really commitments around jobs and how many high-paying union jobs will be available to people who live in the neighborhood. So if we think about housing and keeping housing, part of that is having the quality of the job market. And so we're working with UC Davis to make sure that a certain percentage of jobs, both at Aggie Square and also in the health system, are filled by locals. So that's a really important piece to it. Where will these projects fit in along the affordability scale that was discussed earlier? And Allison said she would like to, I don't know if she's still on the line here. But I think that we really answered that question. We will have affordable housing. There's probably 700 to 750 units going up now that are affordable or workforce. We know we need to do more, and we will continue to do that. In considering the formula to determine CMI, which determines affordable housing, which CMI calculation will be used, the one using the CMI of current residents or the CMI of the UC Davis doctors, nurses, and staff? Danielle, is that something I can give to you, or is there someone else who could answer that?
So in the city, it's based on our community. It's set by the state and federal governments. So all of our affordable housing units use the same calculation, the same income levels, and it's published at the state and federal levels. So it looks at our overall community, not solely Aggie Square.
Great, thank you. What is the name of the housing project Dan is talking about, and where is the property? It's Gateway, and this is at 9th and Stockton and 10th at Stockton. They have one piece of property on each side of the street. Does the city have documentation and/or sources that clearly show how market rate housing helps alleviate housing concerns? It seems, oops, sorry. My screen just changed here. I'm gonna have to go back and find that. Let me try another one. Do the current developers have a CBA with the Oak Park and surrounding communities? If not, why not? That's something that we're working on and hope to bring to council in February, along with the EIFD, the financing authority. Both Councilmember Guerra and I have committed that we will not be supportive until we get a CBA and want to do that at the same time as the formal okay of the EIFD, which is the financing authority.
And that's related to Aggie Square, not
Yeah.
the other developers.
Yeah, sorry. Besides the student apartments located at Aggie Square, will Wexford and UC contribute to affordable housing near Aggie Square, particularly in Oak Park, or contribute to a rental fund to keep low-income residents from being displaced due to gentrification of Oak Park caused by Aggie Square development? That's something that I know we're having discussions with the chancellor about, and it is something that is still on the table to talk about. I don't know if Doug, if you're still on the phone, or Travis, if you want to talk about some of the things that Wexford is doing that will contribute to this, this would be a good time.
And while they pop on here, I also want to recognize both Senator Pan and Assemblymember McCarty, who have been reaching out also directly to the chancellor about the need for housing here.
Thank you, Councilmember Chenier. I think we are still engaged in conversations with both Leslie and the city and the university in figuring out where our community benefit commitments will be. As you can imagine, there are both housing related issues, there are youth development issues, there are opportunities for local employment, all of which comes into this. Our biggest challenge on the affordable housing side is that, you know, in a direct capacity, we're limited to what we're going to build on site. And yet we recognize the importance, as has been displayed tonight, by all the commitments that are being made both by the city council, but all the work that's going on in the neighborhood surrounding this, that protecting affordability in the neighborhoods, protecting housing options in the neighborhoods is a critical factor. So yeah, in these discussions, we will look for where our priorities in terms of funding community engagement, community activities lead, and housing will in some form or fashion be a part of that.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the effort, but still don't want to see our district be location of all the city, county homeless. What can we do in other districts to ensure it is shared? I think Eric and I both agree with you there, and the work we're doing with the leadership of the mayor in creating a homeless strategic plan that spreads everything across the entire city, hopefully will address that issue. We don't think any district should be overburdened or over concentration of homeless services. Probably the River District downtown has the most right now, but certainly Stockton Boulevard is up there, and we understand the challenge.
But I want to add to that, Jay. I mean, we do need to do our part, and then that's not to say that we haven't been doing our part. And I do want to recognize Mercy Housing, because they're willing to build on this project, but they also started off by working and building the Boulevard Court, which is permanent supportive housing for folks who had experienced homelessness. We've got St. John's Center for Real Change, that not only did we help expand their capacity to fund more women and families who has struggled, but most recently, we thanks to Danielle's creativeness here and teaming up, in a matter of 4 days, we applied for Project Home Key with them and Weave, and we were able to secure money for manufactured housing, which is our 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, kitchen and living room space for families who are in transitional need. That's something we did immediately recently, not just in the past. And then finally, Sacramento Self-Help Housing, who's helping with our renters hotline as part of the tenant protection program, has been also purchasing homes and doing a scattered site model where we have folks who are experiencing homelessness with a person that's helping them navigate and coordinate and get back on their feet in individual sites throughout the area. So there is credit to be given on this issue in our district here, and in definitely in Oak Park with the City of Refuge that Jay has been working with in that area. But we still have a larger part that we should be contributing to as well.
Great, thank you. So we have about 6 more minutes. I'm going to try to push through the rest of these if we can. If you need more explanation, please feel free to contact my office, Eric's office. We're happy to have this further discussion with you, and there will be other opportunities as we go forward. So my apologies for moving quickly, but I do want to respect people's time and get everyone out of here at 6:30. Has the community been engaged and included in this process over the past 2 years? What will engagement look like moving forward? So we've made a lot of commitments. I believe if you talk to UC Davis, they will tell you that there's been over 50 meetings in the community of one way or another. They visited all of the local neighborhood associations, had different sorts of community meetings. Councilmember Guerra and I, this is the second town hall of this aspect. We have one more on transportation, and then we'll probably do one more overall. So we're going to continue to reach out to the community in multiple ways as we go forward, but we're always open to suggestions. What is the City of Wexford and UC doing to facilitate a replacement supermarket at the former site of Food Source? So we have a new tenant there. Both my office and Councilmember Guerra's office has been working with the landowner there. We are waiting we have a signed agreement, or they have a signed agreement to put a new market in there, which we're really excited about. And as soon as they give a go ahead, we will do a public ribbon cutting on it. So it's good news. It's a private development. We can't control the timing of that, but my hope is certainly within the next month, if not sooner, we'll be able to cut the ribbon.
Let's keep our fingers crossed, and I don't want to jinx it either. You know, one of these things.
Does the 37 million represent the full EIFD, or is that 20% of what could be generated? I believe that was the 20%, Leslie, that you were talking about. She's
yes,
saying
that's correct.
Yes, that's the 20%. It comes out to about $400,000 a year. And again, we're trying to talk to the county about doing something similar, since they will be generating taxes for themselves off of this project as well. Is UCD contributing directly to the city for infrastructure upgrades and mitigations? Is there a development agreement available? Leslie, do you want to answer that?
UC Davis, we are not entering into a separate development agreement with UC Davis. They actually are because they are state authority, they can operate without, building their own infrastructure, and do not require city entitlements or city permits. We are working very closely with them, though, to coordinate infrastructure improvements, especially infrastructure improvements along Stockton Boulevard, in concert with our Stockton Boulevard planning efforts and our transportation plan and Vision Zero planning. So we are working with them in tandem on those kind of transportation improvements in and around Aggie Square.
And that's a teaser for the next town hall to join in to get more.
That's it. We should just leave it there. This is like the cliffhanger. Stay tuned till next Wednesday, and you can find out about those transportation enhancements.
Right. Any new affordable housing in North Sac, Del Paso Heights, Norwood, Marysville Boulevard? I do not have an answer to that. Leslie, you or Danielle?
Go ahead.
No, Danielle, please. Okay. No, Danielle, please.
Well, one of the projects that Councilmember Guerra mentioned on Home Key, where we're partnering with Weave and doing a project up in North Sac. And then we have several that are in various stages of pre-development. One with VOA, several along Del Paso Boulevard, one with VOA. There's a state surplus property at Del Paso and Arden, where we are anticipating an RFP award here soon, a request for proposals award. And the city is in conversations with Meta Housing to do more of an affordable / workforce housing development on Del Paso Boulevard. We also have interest on Northgate from another affordable housing developer. So there's several underway in pre-development form. I think similar to our previous conversations, folks are gearing up to get the funding together is the next big hurdle.
And, so
again, this is why the $40 million that we set aside and said we want to put these on commercial corridors. This is an incentive to basically get people to say, well, there's opportunity there. Let's go look for vacant land. Let's go look for opportunity areas, because we know the city's prioritizing the commercial corridors.
Exactly right, Councilmember Guerra. All the projects that Danielle mentioned are all on commercial corridors of one description or another. So we really are focusing efforts on those commercial corridors. Stockton, Del Paso Boulevard, Northgate, because housing fits a need as it relates to benefits to the residents, but it certainly fits another need, which is creating a catalyst and a spark for redevelopment and revitalization of those corridors.
Okay, I'm gonna ask two more questions really quickly. Will the funds help replenish the mortgage credit certificate program and Cal Home first time home buyer program from SHRA? I'm currently on their site and it says funding is currently depleted for both city and county of SAC since 3/8/17. The funds that will be generated by this will go into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund or in working collaboration with the community if there are other issues they want addressed with that. But we think housing through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that the city controls is the most important and effective way to do that. And then one last question is where can well, I think somebody answered it, where can I register for transportation? For the next one, we will send that out to everyone as we go forward. So it's 6:31. I want to say a huge thank you to all the staff, to Wexford, to UC Davis for being here, to our developers who are working on Stockton Boulevard. Thank you for doing that. Really appreciate everyone who came and gave us their time tonight. We will do this again next week and talk about transportation issues, which is the next big set of issues. Moving on from workforce, moving on from housing, transportation is the third leg of that stool. Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you for a final word.
That was it. I think we want to thank everyone for their engagement. Again, Jay and I are your neighbors. We're accessible. Email us, call us. Our staff is willing to answer questions. Again, stay tuned to same time, same channel, and we'll get to these issues in more detail for those who care about this on the transportation piece. But if you want to have questions about other things prior to that, feel free to give us a call, give us a ring, and glad to work with the community.
Yeah, we'll just be a little bit patient because we're still not back in the office, so everything's being done remotely, but we're trying to get back to everyone. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day, have a good evening, and please stay safe. We hope to see you next Wednesday.